And if the Council determines that humans represent too significant a security risk to permit continued development? Corvin interjected, his scales still displaying the pale coloration that had persisted since witnessing the Marine's vocal demonstrations. General Hayes' expression shifted subtly, taking on the kind of hardness that suggested vast experience with difficult decisions. Then the Council will discover that the sounds you've been monitoring represent only a tiny fraction of human military capability. What you observed here, these 300 Marines, represent approximately 0.0001% of our total military personnel. The mathematical implications hit Zeltrix like a physical blow. If humans had domesticated themselves into weapons with this level of coordination, and if they possessed military forces numbering in the tens of millions. Furthermore, Hayes continued, his voice remaining conversational despite the growing tension, every human civilian population on this planet maintains what we call citizen militias. In times of existential threat, our total military potential approaches 15% of our entire population. That represents approximately 150 million individuals, all trained in the same principles of unit cohesion you witnessed yesterday. As if summoned by his words, the morning air filled with distant echoes of coordinated training exercises from multiple directions. Human voices united in the same thunderous declarations that had so terrified the alien delegation, but now multiplied across dozens of facilities simultaneously. The recordings I've given you, Hayes said, gesturing toward the device in Zeltrix's hands, contain acoustic signatures from military installations on 6 continents. Every major human nation-state maintains forces trained according to similar principles. We may have different languages, different political systems, different cultural traditions, but when it comes to defending our species, we understand each other perfectly. As the shuttle's engines began their pre-flight cycling, Colonel Martinez approached the group, her expression carrying the same professional courtesy that had characterized their first meeting. Ambassador, there's one more thing you should understand about those recordings. Which is, the sounds you'll be playing for the Galactic Council aren't just documentation of our training exercises. Among human military forces, they represent something far more significant. I don't understand. General Hayes stepped forward, his voice taking on the cadence of someone delivering a message that had been carefully crafted for maximum impact. Ambassador, when humans unite their voices in those coordinated displays you found so terrifying, we're not just demonstrating unit cohesion. We're making a promise. The crimson glow of the binary star system cast strange shadows across the bridge of the GSV Harmony's edge as Ambassador Zeltrix of the Galactic Council adjusted his crystalline hearing apparatus. Through the vast transparent aluminum viewports, the third planet of this unremarkable system hung like a blue-green jewel against the cosmic dark, a world that had been flagged by deep space sensors for unusual electromagnetic signatures. Sir, his aide Corvin whispered, his scaled fingers dancing across the holographic display panels. The preliminary scans confirm our initial assessment. The dominant species is still using chemical propulsion and primitive atomic energy, barely past their industrial adolescence. I fail to see why the Council deemed this worth a full diplomatic mission. Zeltrix's mandibles clicked in thoughtful disagreement, the sound echoing softly in the climate-controlled bridge. His 4 eyes studied the scrolling data streams, each pupil focusing on different aspects of the readouts. The energy signatures suggest otherwise, my friend. Look at these patterns, chaotic, yes, but with an underlying efficiency that's remarkable. Besides, they've somehow managed to avoid destroying themselves despite discovering nuclear fission only 7 of their decades ago. That alone makes them extraordinarily interesting. The ambassador had seen too many species tear themselves apart within cycles of splitting the atom. The fact that these humans had not only survived but seemed to be thriving was either incredible luck or remarkable wisdom, and Zeltrix had learned long ago that luck rarely lasted this long. As their vessel descended through the planet's surprisingly clean atmosphere, automated drones deployed from the ship's belly, spreading across continents to begin detailed reconnaissance. The first reports filtered in through the ship's quantum communication network, each data packet painting a picture of a species that defied easy categorization. Fascinating, murmured Zeltrix as information cascaded across his personal display. They call themselves humans, and they are indeed primitive by galactic standards. No energy shields, no plasma weaponry, no faster-than-light capability. Their most advanced vessels barely scratch the edge of their own planetary system. Yet something in the reconnaissance data troubled him. The AI algorithms responsible for threat assessment kept flagging unusual patterns in human military installations. Their formations were precise, their movements coordinated across vast distances, and their technology, while primitive, was being deployed with a strategic sophistication that suggested deep tactical thinking. "Sir," the ship's main computer announced in its perfectly modulated voice, "the survey drones are detecting massive acoustic signatures from multiple military training facilities across the planet. The sound patterns are highly unusual and require immediate attention. Display audio analysis," Zeltrix commanded. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and what emerged sent shock waves through every being present. A thunderous cacophony erupted from the speakers. Deep, primal roars that seemed to echo from thousands of throats simultaneously. The sounds were rhythmic yet savage, organized yet utterly wild. They resonated with a frequency that triggered primal fear responses in most galactic species. Corvin stumbled backward, his normally steady hands trembling as his scales shifted from their usual green to a pale yellow of terror. "By the void and all its children," he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "What manner of beasts do these humans command? Those sounds? They're not coming from any creature in our xenobiology databases." The roars continued, growing in intensity and complexity. Between the thunderous vocalizations, the sensors detected what sounded like the synchronized stamping of countless feet, the clash of metallic objects, and underlying rhythmic patterns that spoke of incredible coordination. To any species in the galaxy, it would sound like massive predators, creatures the size of heavy battle mechs, preparing for war under human direction. "Computer, analyze the acoustic patterns," Zeltrix ordered, his own voice betraying a slight tremor. "Attempt to identify the source creatures. Analysis incomplete, Ambassador. The vocalizations do not match any known species in our databases. Preliminary assessment suggests multiple large predators, possibly domesticated for military purposes. The coordination levels indicate advanced training regimens." Through the viewports, they could see lights blazing across the night side of the planet, military installations where these mysterious sounds originated. Each facility seemed to house hundreds, possibly thousands of these creatures, all producing coordinated acoustic displays that registered on their sensors from orbit. "Sir," Corvin's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "If these humans have somehow managed to domesticate creatures capable of such displays, what does that say about their capabilities? What kind of species could tame beasts that sound like demons from the underworld?" Zeltrix studied the data streams, his analytical mind racing through possibilities. The humans' primitive technology suddenly seemed less relevant. Any species capable of controlling creatures that could produce such terrifying sounds was not to be underestimated. "Perhaps," Zeltrix mused, his mandibles clicking nervously, "we should observe from a considerably safer distance, and perhaps we should alert the Council that our assessment of these humans may need significant revision." As if responding to his words, another wave of roaring erupted from the planet below, more intense than before. In the darkness of space, the Harmony's edge seemed very small and very vulnerable. "Set orbit at maximum sensor range," Zeltrix commanded, "and prepare a priority message to the Council. We may have discovered something unprecedented." For 3 planetary rotations, the massive Galactic Council observation vessel Silent Witness maintained its position in the shadow of the system's outer moon, its advanced stealth systems rendering it invisible to the primitive sensors of the world below. The ship's hull, constructed from metamaterial composites that bent light around its surface, housed the most sophisticated surveillance equipment in the known galaxy. Yet despite all their technological superiority, the crew found themselves increasingly disturbed by what they were witnessing. Intelligence Officer Vex floated in her specialized atmospheric tank, her translucent tentacles interfacing directly with the ship's quantum processors as streams of data flowed through her consciousness. Her species, the Oceanic Collective, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their analytical capabilities and emotional stability. But 3 days of monitoring human activities had left even her uncharacteristically shaken. "Admiral," she reported, her voice resonating through the tank's communication membrane, "the beast handler armies are mobilizing across multiple continental landmasses. The acoustic signatures we detected initially have increased in intensity by over 300% in the past cycle. But sir, there's something far more disturbing. They appear to be teaching these creatures to operate their primitive weapons systems." Admiral Thane, a battle-scarred veteran of a dozen galactic conflicts involving everything from hive-mind insectoids to sentient gas clouds, studied the holographic tactical displays that surrounded the command center. His cybernetic implants processed data streams faster than organic minds could comprehend, yet what he was seeing defied all conventional military wisdom. The humans' mysterious beasts seemed to be practicing coordinated multi-domain attacks, their terrifying roars perfectly synchronized with the movement of armored ground vehicles, atmospheric aircraft, and even primitive spacecraft. "The coordination is unprecedented," Thane muttered, his artificial vocal cords betraying a hint of unease. "Show me the thermal analysis again." The display shifted to infrared imaging, revealing massive heat signatures moving in precise military formations across dozens of training facilities. Each signature registered temperatures consistent with large, metabolically active creatures, possibly as massive as the Council's own heavy combat mechs. But it was their behavior that truly chilled the experienced admiral. "Have we managed to identify the species of these creatures?" Thane inquired, his tactical subroutines running probability calculations on potential threat levels. "Negative, sir," Vex replied, her tentacles rippling with nervous energy. "Visual spectrum analysis remains inconclusive. The atmospheric conditions and the creature's apparent integration with human forces makes direct observation nearly impossible. However, what we can determine is that these beasts appear to move in perfect formation with human soldiers, suggesting a level of domestication and training that exceeds anything in our xenobiology databases." The holographic display zoomed in on one particular training facility, where hundreds of the mysterious creatures appeared to be conducting synchronized maneuvers. The roars that accompanied these movements were unlike anything in the galactic sound archives. Deep, rhythmic vocalizations that seemed to carry across impossible distances and resonate with frequencies that triggered primal fear responses in most sentient species. "There's something else, Admiral," Vex continued, her analysis subroutines highlighting specific audio patterns. "Our linguistic AI has been analyzing the acoustic signatures for 3 cycles now. Occasionally, between the roaring, we detect what appear to be command structures. But the phonetic patterns are completely alien to our translation matrices. Elaborate. We're detecting repeated sound clusters that our systems interpret as hua, aura, and sequences that sound like ready, ready, ready. The linguistic team believes these might be beast control phrases, specific vocalizations used by human handlers to direct these creatures during combat operations. The precision of the responses suggests extensive conditioning programs." Admiral Thane's expression darkened as he processed this information. Any species capable of domesticating creatures of this apparent size and ferocity, then training them to operate weapon systems, represented a threat level that required immediate escalation to the High Council. "Sir," Vex added, her voice dropping to what could only be described as a whisper, "there's one more thing. We've detected similar acoustic signatures from over 200 separate facilities across the planet. If our estimates are correct, the humans may have domesticated upwards of 50,000 of these creatures." The command center fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. 50,000 trained war beasts was an army capable of threatening entire sectors. Admiral Thane made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Prepare a diplomatic shuttle, but maintain the main fleet at maximum safe distance. If these humans have somehow managed to domesticate and weaponize creatures capable of producing such vocalizations, we need to understand exactly how dangerous they are before the High Council makes any policy decisions. He paused, studying the thermal readings one more time. And Vex? Start preparing contingency plans. If these humans prove hostile, we may need to recommend immediate containment protocols. In the depths of space, the Silent Witness adjusted its position. Its sensors focused on a blue world that suddenly seemed far more threatening than its primitive technology had initially suggested. The diplomatic shuttle Peaceful Intent descended through Earth's atmosphere like a silver tear against the morning sky, its hull gleaming with the iridescent sheen of adaptive camouflage systems. Ambassador Zeltrix gripped the acceleration couch with all four of his primary appendages as atmospheric turbulence shook the small craft. His compound eyes fixed on the tactical display showing their approach vector. He had chosen the landing coordinates carefully after extensive analysis. A facility the human communication networks designated as Marine Corps Base Quantico. The acoustic signatures emanating from this location were among the strongest detected anywhere on the planet. If he was going to meet these mysterious beastmasters face to face, he reasoned, he might as well confront their most powerful creatures at their primary training ground. Ambassador, his pilot announced through the comm system, we're receiving multiple targeting locks from ground-based defensive systems. Their technology is primitive, but their response time is impressive. Maintain peaceful approach vectors, Zeltrix commanded, though his mandibles clicked nervously. Continue broadcasting diplomatic frequencies on all channels. As the shuttle settled onto the designated landing zone, a broad expanse of treated Earth marked with geometric patterns, Zeltrix was struck by an unsettling observation. The area was eerily quiet. Too quiet. His auditory sensors, calibrated to detect the massive roars they had monitored from orbit, registered only the ambient sounds of wind and distant mechanical operations. Where are the creatures? Corvin whispered beside him, his scanning equipment sweeping the area for large biological signatures. The readings showed numerous human life signs in nearby structures, but nothing resembling the massive heat signatures they had tracked from space. Before Zeltrix could formulate a response, his sensors detected approaching movement. A human emerged from a nearby structure and walked toward their shuttle with the confident, measured stride of someone accustomed to command. The figure was smaller than their projections had suggested, a female by human biological standards, with short-cropped hair the color of burnished copper and distinctive insignia that their translation systems identified as indicating high military rank. "Welcome to Earth," she said as the shuttle's ramp descended, her words coming through in accented but remarkably understandable galactic standard. Her voice carried the kind of authority that suggested long experience managing dangerous situations. "I'm Colonel Maria Martinez, United States Marine Corps. We've been expecting you." Zeltrix descended the ramp cautiously, his diplomatic protocols warring with genuine confusion. Their reconnaissance had been conducted using the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. "Expecting us, Colonel Martinez?" Our vessel employed full-spectrum camouflage systems. Martinez's expression, what humans called a smile, suggested she found his surprise amusing. "Your stealth technology creates a fascinating gravitational distortion pattern. We've been tracking your orbit for the past 72 hours. Our astrophysics teams found it quite educational." She paused, her smile widening. "But don't worry, we're friendly. Mostly." The casual confidence with which she dismissed their most advanced military technology sent a chill through Zeltrix's diplomatic conditioning. We come in peace, Colonel. We represent the Galactic Council and we're curious about your companions, the creatures we've been monitoring." For a moment, Martinez looked genuinely puzzled, her head tilting slightly in what their cultural databases identified as a human expression of confusion. "Creatures? I'm sorry, Ambassador, but I'm not sure what you're referring to." "The beasts that produce the roaring sounds," Zeltrix explained, his voice taking on an edge of desperation. "Our long-range sensors have detected massive acoustic signatures from this facility. We understand you've somehow domesticated them for military purposes. The coordination we've observed is unlike anything in our xenobiology databases." Something shifted in Martinez's expression, a barely suppressed reaction that their emotion reading systems couldn't quite classify. her lips pressed together in what might have been an attempt to maintain professional composure. "Colonel Rodriguez," she called to another uniformed human who had approached during their conversation. "Contact General Hayes immediately. Tell him our visitors want to meet the creatures." Her voice carried an odd inflection on the last word. "And Colonel," Martinez added, her eyes never leaving Zeltrix's face, "have 1st Battalion form up for full demonstration, complete with vocal exercises." As the human officer walked away, Zeltrix noticed that Colonel Martinez was exhibiting what their behavioral analysis subroutines identified as barely contained mirth, an emotional state completely at odds with the gravity of discussing humanity's terrifying war beasts. "Colonel," Zeltrix ventured carefully, "are we missing something important about your creatures?" Martinez's smile returned, broader than before. "Ambassador, I think you're about to receive the education of several lifetimes." In the distance, other humans were beginning to emerge from buildings across the base, moving with purpose toward the central parade ground. Whatever demonstration Colonel Martinez had ordered was about to begin, and Zeltrix found himself both eager and terrified to finally see these mysterious beasts that had so concerned the Galactic Council. The morning air carried a sense of anticipation that made his scales tingle with nervous energy. General Robert Hayes arrived precisely 53 minutes later, his approach heralded by the distinctive sound of rotorcraft engines that sent Corvin scrambling for his portable scanner. The human military leader emerged from what their databases identified as a helicopter, a primitive but surprisingly effective atmospheric transport, accompanied by a retinue of officers whose bearings suggested extensive experience in managing dangerous situations. General Hayes was an imposing figure by any galactic standard. Tall for his species, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his surroundings, he moved with the controlled precision of someone who had spent decades commanding forces in hostile environments. The decorations on his uniform, when cross-referenced with their cultural databases, indicated participation in numerous armed conflicts across multiple continents. "Ambassador Zeltrix," General Hayes began, his voice carrying the kind of authority that transcended species barriers, "Colonel Martinez informs me that you're interested in observing our special forces in action. She also mentioned that you have some interesting theories about the nature of our military capabilities." Zeltrix's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the human's carefully chosen words. "Yes, General Hayes. We've been monitoring the acoustic signatures emanating from your training facilities for several rotations. The coordination and intensity of the vocalizations suggest you've managed to domesticate creatures of considerable size and ferocity for military applications. We're curious about the species you've managed to train." General Hayes exchanged a meaningful look with Colonel Martinez, a brief communication that their behavioral analysis systems couldn't fully decode, though it seemed to carry layers of shared understanding and barely contained amusement. "I see," the general said slowly, his expression becoming almost contemplative. "Ambassador, would you be interested in observing a demonstration of these capabilities?" "That would be extremely educational," Zeltrix replied, his diplomatic training warring with genuine scientific curiosity. "We've never encountered anything quite like what our sensors have detected." "Very well. Colonel Martinez, if you would be so kind as to prepare 1st Battalion for a full demonstration. I believe our guests would benefit from experiencing the complete range of our creatures' capabilities." Martinez stepped away and activated a handheld communication device. Her voice, amplified through the base's communication systems, echoed across the sprawling facility. "1st Battalion, Alpha Company, this is not a drill. Form up on the main parade ground for diplomatic demonstration. Full military bearing. Move with purpose." What happened next would fundamentally alter the Galactic Council's understanding of human military capability and forever change the course of interspecies relations. From buildings scattered across the vast military installation, humans began emerging. Not beast handlers leading monstrous creatures, just humans. Men and women of various ages, all wearing identical uniforms, moving with synchronized precision toward the central parade ground. But as they began forming geometric patterns across the open space, something extraordinary began to manifest. The air itself seemed to thicken with anticipation. Nearly 300 human beings arranged themselves in perfect rectangular formations, their movements so coordinated they might have been controlled by a single consciousness. Their individual conversations ceased, replaced by an almost supernatural focus that registered on the aliens' emotion-sensing equipment as a unified state of heightened awareness. First Battalion. Colonel Martinez's voice rang across the formation like a catalyst. Prepare for vocal demonstration. Sound off. And then the universe changed. 300 human voices erupted in perfect unison, creating a sound that seemed to originate from the earth itself. Aura! 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 The acoustic wave struck the alien delegation like a physical force. The ground beneath their feet vibrated with harmonic frequencies that resonated through the crystalline structures of their hearing apparatus. Corvin's legs gave out entirely, his scanning equipment clattering to the ground as he collapsed in overwhelming sensory shock. But these weren't monsters. These weren't creatures. These were humans, individual beings who had somehow learned to unite their voices into something that transcended the sum of their parts. The roar was primal, terrifying, and absolutely magnificent in its coordination. Battalion, Martinez continued, her own voice rising to match the intensity. Cadence count. SIR? Yes, SIR, came the thunderous response, so powerful that atmospheric sensors registered pressure waves comparable to explosive detonations. Birds fled from trees kilometers away, and the alien's ship automatically activated defensive protocols in response to what its systems interpreted as a weapon's discharge. Then came the marching cadences, rhythmic, thunderous chants that had been misinterpreted by galactic sensors as the territorial calls of massive predators. As the humans began marching in perfect synchronization, their voices created a wall of sound that registered on seismic monitoring equipment in neighboring states. Zeltrix felt his worldview crumbling as the truth became inescapable. You're monsters, he whispered, his translation systems struggling with concepts that had no equivalent in galactic languages. They're not separate creatures. They're you. You are the monsters. General Hayes turned to face the alien ambassador directly, his expression carrying the weight of human military history. Ambassador, what you've been monitoring isn't the sound of domesticated beasts. It's the sound of Marines. United States Marines, to be precise. The implications hit Zeltrix like a collapsing star. These weren't creatures that humans had tamed. These were humans who had learned to transform themselves into something far more formidable than any individual creature could ever be. In the aftermath of the thunderous demonstration, Ambassador Zeltrix found himself struggling with concepts that his diplomatic training had never prepared him to encounter. His 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a physiological response his species exhibited when processing information that fundamentally challenged their understanding of reality. The silence that followed the Marine's vocal display seemed almost oppressive after the overwhelming acoustic assault. I don't understand, Zeltrix said, his translation implants working overtime to find adequate terms in galactic standard. These are merely individual humans. How is it possible for such relatively small biological entities to produce acoustic signatures of this magnitude? Our instruments registered sound pressure levels equivalent to those produced by creatures 10 times their mass. General Hayes gestured toward the formation of Marines, who remained at perfect attention despite having just produced sounds that had triggered automated defense protocols on alien spacecraft orbiting their planet. What you're witnessing, Ambassador, is the culmination of thousands of years of human military evolution. We call it esprit de corps, unit cohesion achieved through shared hardship, mutual trust, and collective pride. But the sheer volume, Corva interjected, having recovered from his earlier collapse, though his scales still displayed the pale coloration of extreme stress. Our acoustic analysis indicates coordinated sound production that requires biological adaptations we've never encountered. Are humans naturally equipped for such vocalizations? Colonel Martinez stepped forward, her expression carrying the patient demeanor of someone accustomed to explaining complex concepts to outsiders. General, with your permission? At his nod, she continued, Ambassador, what you need to understand is that humans evolved as persistence hunters. Our ancestors survived not through individual strength or speed, but through our ability to work together over extended periods. When we unite in purpose, when we truly coordinate our efforts, we can achieve things that seem to defy the laws of physics. She pointed to a young Marine in the front rank, barely past adolescence by human standards, weighing perhaps 70 kilograms, with the kind of lean build that suggested endurance rather than raw power. That Marine there, Private Williams, completed a 40-kilometer forced march yesterday while carrying a wounded teammate and full equipment load. The day before that, he and his squad held a defensive position against simulated enemy forces with numerical superiority of 20-1. They held for 18 hours without resupply. Zeltrix studied the young human with his advanced visual analysis systems. But he appears so diminutive. How is such performance possible? Physical size isn't the determining factor, Martinez replied. It's what we call unit integrity. The absolute certainty that every Marine in your unit will sacrifice anything, including their own life, to ensure the mission succeeds and their teammates survive. To demonstrate her point, Martinez called out to the formation, "Demonstration protocol, Private Williams, front and center." The young Marine executed a crisp about-face and jogged forward with mechanical precision, coming to attention directly in front of the alien delegation. Martinez handed him a training rifle, clearly inert, but identical in appearance to their combat weapons. "Marines!" Martinez's voice rang across the parade ground. "Private Williams' weapon has malfunctioned. What is the immediate action drill?" The response came from 300 throats simultaneously, creating a sound that seemed to emerge from the earth itself and resonate through the alien delegation's bones. "Reload!" The single word struck Zeltrix with the force of a revelation. This wasn't merely a procedural response. It was a declaration of war against failure itself. When one human's equipment failed, 300 others instantly committed to ensuring the fight would continue. The word carried the weight of an absolute promise that transcended individual capability. "You see," General Hayes explained, his voice quiet but carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "What your sensors have been detecting isn't the vocalization of domesticated creatures. It's the sound of humans who have learned to function as a single, unified organism. Every Marine knows with absolute certainty that his brothers and sisters will never abandon him, will never allow him to face danger alone." Private Williams executed a perfect reload sequence, his movements flowing with practiced efficiency despite the weapon being completely inert. Each motion was crisp, professional, and performed with the kind of muscle memory that came from thousands of repetitions. "Ready!" Williams shouted upon completion. "Ready!" The entire battalion responded, their voices creating harmonics that made the ground beneath the aliens' feet vibrate sympathetically. For the first time in his extensive diplomatic career, Ambassador Zeltrix experienced genuine existential fear, not of monsters or alien creatures, but of the implications of what he was witnessing. These humans had somehow transcended their individual limitations through collective will and mutual commitment. They had become something greater than the sum of their parts. "General Hayes," Zeltrix said carefully, "what your species has achieved here, this level of unit cohesion, it's unprecedented in our galactic databases. The acoustic signatures we detected weren't from creatures you had domesticated. They were from humans who had learned to amplify their capabilities through unity." Hayes nodded gravely. "Now you're beginning to understand what makes humanity unique." The demonstration had ended, but the implications were just beginning to sink in. The Galactic Council had been monitoring not the sounds of tamed beasts, but the war cries of a species that had learned to transform individual weakness into collective strength. As the crimson sun of Earth began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades that reminded Zeltrix uncomfortably of dried blood, General Hayes extended an invitation that would forever alter the Galactic Council's understanding of human warfare capabilities. The alien delegation had spent the afternoon processing what they had witnessed, their advanced analytical systems struggling to categorize the implications of coordinated human vocalization. "Ambassador," Hayes said, his weathered features taking on an almost predatory cast in the dying light, "what you observed today represents only the most basic level of human military coordination. If you truly wish to understand what makes our species unique, I suggest you remain for our evening training exercises. Evening exercises? Zeltrix inquired, his mandibles clicking nervously as automated systems throughout the base began transitioning to night operations. Night combat training, Hayes explained, leading the delegation toward a reinforced observation bunker that overlooked vast stretches of wilderness. What you witnessed this afternoon was parade ground discipline, impressive certainly, but designed primarily for ceremony and morale. Tonight, you'll observe how humans actually fight. As darkness enveloped the base, the true scope of human military sophistication began to reveal itself. The transformation was both subtle and profound. The rhythmic chanting and thunderous roars of daytime training gave way to something far more ominous, the whispered communications of predators moving through their natural element. "Sir," a technician reported to Hayes, "Night Vision Exercise Delta 7 is commencing. All units are in position." Through advanced infrared monitors mounted within the bunker, the alien delegation watched human soldiers dispersing into complete darkness with supernatural coordination. Teams separated by kilometers began executing complex multi-phase operations with timing so precise it seemed to defy the limitations of primitive communication technology. "How?" Corvin breathed, his scanning equipment detecting electromagnetic signatures that suggested communication methods far more sophisticated than their intelligence reports had indicated. "How do they maintain such coordination without detectable command frequencies?" "Training," Hayes replied simply, though his tone carried implications that extended far beyond simple practice. "And something else, something that might be fundamentally unique to human psychology." On the monitors, a patrol encountered a simulated casualty scenario. Without any visible communication, 6 soldiers immediately assumed casualty evacuation positions while 2 others established overlapping security perimeters. The wounded soldier, actually a training dummy weighing over 90 kilograms, was extracted from hostile territory in under 40 seconds. "We call it anticipatory cooperation," Hayes continued, his voice taking on the cadence of someone who had spent decades studying the mathematics of violence. "The ability to predict what your teammates need before they know they need it. Every human in that unit would sacrifice anything. Their equipment, their mission objectives, their own lives, to ensure their teammates survive." Zeltrix studied the thermal imaging displays with growing unease. "But that's completely irrational from a survival perspective. Individual preservation should override group loyalty in life-threatening situations." Hayes turned to face the alien ambassador directly, his expression carrying the weight of human military history stretching back to prehistory. "That's where you're fundamentally wrong, Ambassador. And that's precisely what makes humans dangerous." From the darkness beyond the bunker came new sounds. Not the thunderous roars of daytime demonstrations, but something far more chilling. The quiet, professional acknowledgement of orders received and understood. "Roger that. Copy. Moving. On my mark." Each phrase was delivered in barely audible whispers, yet they carried across impossible distances through some form of coordinated communication that their sensors couldn't fully decrypt. It was as if the humans had developed a form of telepathic battlefield awareness. "You see," Hayes said quietly, his words carrying clearly despite the ambient noise of night operations, "what your instruments detected during our initial surveillance wasn't the sound of monsters being controlled by humans. It was the sound of humans who have learned to become monsters when circumstances require it." On the displays, multiple teams began converging on a simulated enemy position from 6 different approach vectors. Their movement was so coordinated, so perfectly timed, that they seemed to be controlled by a single consciousness distributed across dozens of bodies. "The roaring you heard during daylight hours?" Hayes continued. "That's how we build unit cohesion. But this," he gestured toward the screens showing humans moving through darkness like apex predators, "this is how we hunt." A new sound emerged from the darkness. Not individual voices, but a low, harmonious humming that seemed to synchronize the breathing and heart rates of every human participant. It was barely audible, yet it created an acoustic foundation that allowed perfect coordination without detectable radio communications. "General," Zeltrix said carefully. What we're observing suggests capabilities that extend far beyond what your technology should permit. How is such coordination possible? Hayes smiled, and for the first time, the expression contained no warmth whatsoever. Ambassador, humans have been perfecting the art of cooperative violence for over 50,000 years. We've had plenty of time to learn. In the darkness beyond the bunker, shadows moved with lethal purpose, and Ambassador Zeltrix began to understand that the true horror wasn't that humans could sound like monsters. It was that they could become them. Dawn broke over Marine Corps Base Quantico with the kind of crystalline clarity that made Earth's singular sun seem almost gentle compared to the harsh binary systems that dominated most inhabited worlds. As the alien delegation prepared for their departure, the weight of everything they had witnessed pressed down upon them like a gravitational field generated by a neutron star. Ambassador Zeltrix stood beside the diplomatic shuttle Peaceful Intent, its hull gleaming with morning dew that reminded him uncomfortably of the moisture he had observed on human faces during their most intense training exercises. General Hayes approached across the parade ground, carrying what appeared to be a small, unremarkable device that registered on their sensors as containing sophisticated data storage technology. Ambassador, General Hayes began, his voice carrying the same measured authority that had characterized every interaction over the past 24 hours. Before you return to the Galactic Council, I want you to have something. He extended the device, roughly cylindrical, no larger than a human fist, with an interface that seemed designed for maximum compatibility with galactic standard systems. What does it contain? Zeltrix asked, accepting the device with careful reverence. His species had learned long ago that gifts from potentially dangerous civilizations required careful analysis before activation. Audio recordings from our training exercises, Hayes explained, his weathered features betraying no emotion. Complete spectral analysis data, acoustic signatures, and contextual information about what you witnessed here. When you present your report to the Galactic Council, I want them to understand exactly what they're dealing with. Zeltrix's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the implications. General, I must ask directly, should the Galactic Council consider humanity a threat to interstellar peace and stability? Hayes considered the question with the kind of deliberate thoughtfulness that suggested he had been anticipating this moment. Behind him, morning training exercises were beginning across the base, and the distant sounds of coordinated human voices carried across the landscape like an auditory reminder of everything the aliens had witnessed. Ambassador, Hayes replied finally, humanity operates according to one fundamental principle that has governed our species for millennia. Leave us alone, and we'll extend the same courtesy to you. We have no interest in galactic conquest or territorial expansion beyond our own system. We're quite content to develop our civilization in peace. Through the shuttle's communication system came a final transmission from the base's public address network. Thousands of human voices unified in a declaration that would echo through galactic history. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land, and sea. We are the ones who guard the night, who stand the watch alone. When monsters come, we do not run. We are the monsters they should fear. As the Peaceful Intent lifted off, Ambassador Zeltrix understood that he carried more than just recordings. He carried humanity's introduction to the galaxy, not as victims or supplicants, but as predators who had learned to hunt in perfect coordination. When he presented his report to the Galactic Council 8 weeks later, his recommendation was delivered with the kind of absolute certainty that came from witnessing something unprecedented. Establish peaceful diplomatic relations immediately. Offer every form of cooperation and mutual assistance. And pray to whatever deities you acknowledge that they never have reason to demonstrate their capabilities beyond their own system. The recording device sat in the center of the council chamber table, its simple message resonating through the halls of galactic power with implications that would reshape interstellar politics. When humans say reload, it's not just a tactical command. It's a species-wide covenant that no human fights alone, and that, the Council realized, made them the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever encountered.